This video is about the data protection policies and procedures you should have in place and how you will record and audit those arrangements. So the section covers your privacy notice, data protection policy and what this should cover, and data protection audits. Now, the first mandatory question about this is whether your organization has a privacy notice, so question 1.1.3. Now, under data protection law, people have the right to be informed about the use of their personal data. This is fundamental to individuals being able to exercise their rights when you are processing their personal data. And you will be processing personal data for the people you support in order to deliver care to them, and also for staff so that they get paid, for example. In order to meet this requirement under the Data Protection Act, you must tell people what you are doing with your data, with their data, who you will share it with, how long you will keep it, and what people's rights are. This should be set out in writing in a privacy notice. So individuals must be made aware of this information. You can give them a copy of it directly or indirectly through leaflets, notice boards, and having it on your website, for example. Whatever you do, it must be easily accessible and easy to read and understand. And it might be that you choose to have more than one different privacy notice, say for different audiences, for example, one for your staff and another for the people you support. Now, there is a link on the tooltip here to a template privacy notice from the Digital Care Hub that you can download and adapt and make it your own. Or if you have one already, you could just use that to check that your existing privacy notice provides all of the things that you should do. So to answer this question, you need to upload a file. And you can do that in one of four ways. You can either upload the actual document itself, reference an existing document if you've already uploaded a toolkit to another question, uploaded your privacy notice to another question in the toolkit. You can specify an intranet or an internet link to that document, or you can enter text describing where that document is normally kept. And on this occasion, I'm going to assume that you have a privacy notice that's somewhere on the internet. And for my organisation, we have a privacy policy, and that's the internet link to it there. And I might put something in the comments saying when it was last updated or any other useful information you might have there, and save it. Now, question 1.2.4 is about the national data opt-out. And the national data opt-out gives everyone the ability to stop health and social care organisations from sharing their confidential patient information for reasons other than providing their individual care and treatment. And as a care provider, you should help the people who use your services to understand that they can opt out of their data being used for other purposes. So that's purposes other than providing care for them. And you should ensure that your organisation complies with the national data opt-out. And this question in the toolkit is about the latter, how you comply with the national data opt-out. And the opt-out applies to CQC registered adult social care providers in England if you have people funded by local authorities or the NHS. And if that's the case, you should check that your data protection policy and your privacy notice cover the opt-out. Now, to note, the national data opt-out only applies where the data processing relies on Regulation 5 of the Control of Patient Information Regulations 2002. That's a lot to remember, but you don't really have to, because it's only likely to be the case if you're taking part in some research and say a research institute is accessing your data. You don't need to worry about it if you use people's personal data to provide their care, your normal business, or where the individual has consented to the processing. So, assuming that you're not taking part in any research, what you need to do is insert an extra sentence or so into your data protection policy and into your privacy notice, saying something like, "We do not share any data for planning or research purposes for which the national data opt-out would apply." You don't have to remember that, because this link uh, in the toolkit here takes you to a page on the Digital Care Hub that has lots more information about the opt-out, and including what to do if you are taking part in some kind of research. But if I scroll further down, you can see it gives some example sentences here to put into a data protection policy and to add into your privacy notice. So to answer this question, make sure you've done that first, and then tick to confirm that you've added extra clauses into data protection policy, for instance, or whatever it is that you've done. And talking of policies, the next question, 1.3.1, which asks whether your organisation has up-to-date policies in place for data protection and data and cybersecurity. You should have policies and staff guidance about this. And as it says here in the guidance, that those policies need to cover data protection, data quality, record keeping, data security, and where relevant, network security. And I say where relevant because if you don't have a network, then you don't need a network security policy. Now, there's no set number of the policies that your organisation needs to have, as long as it covers those topics, because different sizes and complexity of organisations means that so a small organisation might have one all-encompassing policy, where others might have multiple policies. But the important thing is that you have them and that your staff follow them. And they don't have to be called these things. They could be called an information governance policy or GDPR policy. It doesn't really matter as long as it covers the right information. Now, there are policy templates available from Digital Care Hub. There's quite a long list here, including data protection policy, data quality policy, record keeping policy, data security policy, and network security policy. Those ones listed. So my suggestion is that you download them, read them, adapt them and use them in your own organisation, or if you already have them, just check yours against those templates to make sure they cover everything that they need to. And once you've done that, you can tick the box to confirm that you have those policies. And you might want to put in here something like you have one or encompassing data protection policy saved, wherever it is, or whatever would be helpful for you to know how and why you're answering that question. The question 1.3.2 asks whether your organisation regularly reviews the effectiveness of those policies, those data handling and security controls. So you might call those spot checks or audits, something like that, because the data protection legislation says that you should regularly assess the effectiveness of your data security, which means checking that staff are doing what it says in your policy. So this could mean, if relevant, for example, checking that office doors and filing cabinets are kept locked if that's what your policy says, or that kept locked when they're not in use, and that staff aren't sharing their logins and passwords, for instance. So the toolkit suggests that you should do this at least once a year, and it could be that you incorporate this activity into other audits that you're already carrying out. And importantly, it suggests that you keep a record of these spot checks. Once you can prove you've done it, but secondly, that you've got a record of any actions that you took as a result. So you can, improve and refine your arrangements. And if you're not sure quite what to check, then there is a link here to an example audit spot check. I think I've got one already open. Data security audit checklist here that you can use to as a template, but do adapt this to match whatever it is in your own policies to check against. So to answer this question, tick the box to say that yes, you do these regular audit spot checks, and I suggest adding in the comments the date that you last carried out the last check. There's two more questions in this section, and they're both related to your data protection policy. That's question 1.3.7 and 1.3.8. Now, the first one is about the principle of designing in data protection before commencing a new project. And the second one is about how you put this into practice. And this is a concept called data protection by design. So in this question, this means thinking about building the right thought processes into your way of doing things when you start a new project or you implement a new way of working, anything that might impact on the data that you're responsible for. For example, you might be implementing a new payroll system or new shared record system or care planning system. And it's important that your data protection policy states how you will do this at the start of the process, so that data protection is a key consideration which is built into your new project or new way of working from the beginning. So you need to ensure that your data protection policy has a section on this. And if you use the template policy that's available on the Digital Care Hub website, you'll see that there's a policy about data protection by design. So check your policy against the template one on the website to make sure that's covered. And when it does, you can tick the box and save it. And question 1.3.8 asks you to check that your policy describes how you identify and minimize risks to personal data when introducing a new system or changing a process or starting a project. Now, this type of risk assessment is called a data protection impact assessment, sometimes known as a DPIA. And your data protection policy must make reference to this. So in other words, it must state that you will do a DPIA if you start something new that involves personal data. And that you have to write something like that into your data protection policy. And again, that is covered in the template data protection policy that you can download from the Digital Care Hub website. And if you ever have to do one, there is further guidance here to the Information Commissioner's Office that will give you a template DPIA. And what they are is they're designed to help you analyse, identify and minimise the data protection risks of projects or plans within your organisation. You must undertake a DPIA if your organisation is planning to do things like use a new technology, such as introduce remote monitoring or bring in a new care planning system, if you're going to process biometric data, such as health monitoring apps, if you're going to track individuals' location or behaviour, such as food and activity logging, or install CCTV. So if you're going to do anything like that, you need to make sure that you do a DPIA, and your data protection policy must say that. So this question is not so much about doing any particular DPIA as making sure that you have arrangements in place to do one when you need to. So read through your data protection policy and check that it mentions this. And if it does, you can tick that box and maybe add some comments here, such as where your DPIA template is, or if you've done some in the last few years, you could mention what risk assessments you've carried out. Once you've done that, you can save that question.